Week 2 of the college football season brings us a good old-fashioned rivalry. Iowa and Iowa State are playing the 72nd edition of the Cy-Hawk rivalry. The two playing dates all the way back to 1894. Iowa State won that first meeting 16-8. Now you go to 2025 and Iowa State comes into this contest ranked 16th in the country. A little bit of the tail of the tape before the Saturday noon kickoff Eastern Standard Time. That first meeting I mentioned, and Iowa has won 6 straight times when they've gone over to Ames. The last loss, 2011. The tailgating scene might be crazy. The game hopefully will be even better, and all the fans, I sure hope, will stay safe throughout it all. But let's take this a step further and now bring in Alec Bussey, who covers Iowa State for 24/7 Sports, and David Eicholt, who does the same covering Iowa for 24/7 Sports. David, I want to start with you here and get into it for like those who are not really too familiar with the rivalry. You hear Iowa, you hear Iowa State, and you just don't know, like, what are the vibes? What does this rivalry look like? What are the feelings that come out of this?
I mean, this is when Iowa State and Iowa fans get together, right? The work colleagues get together, they make fun side bets, they drink a lot of Busch Light, and there's a lot of smack talk throughout it. This game is an absolute war. A ton of physicality. Obviously, special teams is going to be a big factor in this one, but it just means something to this state. And I think it's really juiced up over the past decade or so. I think what Matt Campbell's done with Iowa State has been absolutely spectacular. I think that's really sort of put this rivalry on a map. And Seth Wallace, Iowa's linebacker coach, ended his press conference yesterday with this. There are 90 kids from the state of Iowa on these two rosters. 60 different high schools represent, and there are 34 guys on the two deep between the Iowa State and Iowa roster. And he said that's what makes this game so unique and special. Wherever cornfield you grow up in, right, the west side of Iowa, the east side of Iowa, north or south, everybody gets involved at these games. Families get together, and this is just something that each Iowa kid, I think, dreams of playing in on one side or the other. So I'm really excited for this one. And I think what Matt Campbell's done to elevate Iowa State's national prestige, it's really, really helped captivate the national scene on this.
Yeah, David talked about how this rivalry has started to become more nationally known. I think that's best seen in the fact that College Game Day was on site in 2019 and 2021 for this matchup in Ames. Last year, the game was nationally broadcast on CBS. This year, it's on network television again with Fox's big noon pregame show coming along with its broadcast crew. I think that kind of shows that this rivalry series is starting to leave the state's borders and maybe captivate a little bit more of the Midwest and maybe even potentially, you think, nationally as well. I don't know if it necessarily has the impact of games like Florida State or Miami, Notre Dame, those out of conference or independent ACC opponent type of rivalries do or have traditionally. But I think in the Midwest, and particularly in this state, a lot of people care a lot about this rivalry because you're either on one side of it or the other side of it when it comes to college football in this state.
Yeah, it's a game that certainly is growing intrigue and has stars in it. And I think for that, the convo certainly starts with Rocco Becht with the Cyclones. And Alec, he's coming off of a program record 95% completion percentage, albeit against an FCS opponent, but still great nonetheless. How good does he need to be for an Iowa State win to happen on Saturday?
Yeah, I think Rocco just needs to do what he's done for the last 3 years as Iowa State starting quarterback. This is his 3rd year as the Cyclones QB1, and he's gotten better in each of his first 2 years. And now that he's in his 3rd year, he's had to kind of step up and I think become the engine of Iowa State's offense with Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll both being day 2 NFL draft picks by the Houston Texans. And so far this year, Rocco Becht is off to a phenomenal start for the Cyclones. You mentioned his 19 of 20 performance on Saturday against FCS South Dakota. He's already up to 461 yards through 2 games. He has 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. But perhaps the biggest improvement that he's made is his completion percentage is hovering around 68, 69% on the year. And he's doing that really efficiently. He's averaging over 9.5 yards per attempt. I think that's something that could be a big influence in Saturday's game because Iowa has some inexperience at the linebacker spot as well as in the secondary. And with Iowa State, their tight ends have really excelled in the passing game so far this year, accounting for over 50% of the team's yards and receptions. They've also got some speedy receivers that are starting to emerge. When you think about Brett Eskildson, Dominic Overby, they each had touchdowns against Kansas State. Becht has done a good job of facilitating Iowa State's offense to start the year, and I think that can continue on Saturday if he comes out ready to go and really attacks some of those weak spots of the Iowa defense that we just talked about.
Yeah, Alec nailed it. I mean, that's the big matchup to watch, right? And the thing that makes Rocco so unique is the fact that he makes his receivers better, right? And that's what great quarterbacks do. I think this is the first real year that he's getting the respect that he deserves. And the other side of it, too, is he's got moxie. He has 5 fourth-quarter comebacks in his career. He did it once last year against Iowa that led to Conradi's game-winning field goal. But I think for the Iowa defense, they have to get pressure on Rocco Becht. I think Iowa's defensive line is one of the best in the Big Ten. Aaron Graves could have a big game. I'm keeping my eye on Max Llewellyn, in-state native as well, Ethan Herkett, who has made big plays throughout the last couple of years, a team captain. He represented Iowa at Big Ten Media Days. But like Alex said, you look at the linebacker role. Iowa was so senior-led last year with Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, and Sebastian Castro. They had to replace all those pieces. And you have to trust Phil Parker's defense and what he's accomplished over the course of his career. And the Iowa defense is such a staple. But this is the first real test for a lot of these guys. I mean, Jaden Harrell's a graduate player for Iowa. He's had a lot of spring reps, a lot of fall reps throughout the past few years, but you cannot replicate game speed and game experience. I think Iowa needs to try to rattle Rocco Becht early, and it's very difficult to do. Put him in the dirt and maybe try to force him to make some mistakes. But if they allow a little bit of slip up like they did in the touchdown drive that Albany had last week, Rocco Becht's good enough to make him pay. So I'm very, very interested in what Phil Parker is going to have to dial up.
So you have Rocco Becht on one side. The other side, you look at the Hawkeyes, and you see Mark Gronowski, who is, from a completion yard standpoint, is not coming off of a banner week last week. David, what type of game does he need to have to give Iowa a shot?
I mean, I think he needs to be himself. I think he got dragged on social media last week, of course, by rival fan bases. And, Iowa fans are worried, but I also think Iowa fans have been relatively scarred by the past couple of years of quarterback play. But Mark Gronowski's different. This is a guy who it's not like he forgot how to play football, right? He has 132 career touchdowns, over 12,000 all-purpose yards, the first true dual threat quarterback that Iowa's had in over a decade. It's a guy who's had to bounce back throughout his career. He's won 50 career games. He can escape the pocket. He runs the ball well. He can make throws at all 3 levels. I think Tim Lester needs to put him in a position to succeed. And I think ultimately he just needs to sell down. He's played in big games. He's won an FCS Heisman. He's won an FCS National Championship. I think people are very worried about week 1, and I think there's good reason to. But if he goes out there, guys, and puts up 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, runs for 45 yards, has another score, do you think anybody's talking about his week 1 performance? Absolutely not. But I also think it's going to be a revenge scene for Iowa offensive coordinator Tim Lester, who flat out said he wants another crack at this Iowa State defense. He felt like they were 1 kill shot away last year from really taking over the game. But ultimately, McNamara threw an interception, changed the course of the game. So I think Gronowski just needs to kind of channel some of his days from South Dakota State and just, again, be himself. The accolades, I think, speak for itself.
Yeah, and Iowa State is doing a lot of preparation on Mark Gronowski from the perspective of where he was at and the success he had at South Dakota State. Matt Campbell spoke about that on Tuesday, speaking so highly about what Gronowski accomplished, the things that he achieved during his time at South Dakota State. David did a great job of kind of highlighting some of those accomplishments, winning the Walter Payton Award, the FCS version of the Heisman Trophy. That's no small feat, right? And I think his 8 of 15 passing performance on Saturday against Albany in week 1, that's certainly not how he wanted to start, especially with some of those misses that he had in the red zone. Mark Gronowski is more talented than that. We know that because we saw it on tape, and I think Iowa State knows that as well. At the same time, I think that the Cyclone defense has to be ready to play in this one. This is a Iowa offensive line that returns a lot of key pieces. When you think about Jennings Dunker, you think about Logan Jones on the interior at the center position. I think one of the most fascinating matchups will be is if the Cyclones are able to generate interior pressure. Dominique Orange looks like a top 50 NFL draft pick right now, this coming April. He has the matchup against Logan Jones on the interior of the offensive line. And that's one of the most fascinating to me because I would say it doesn't necessarily have the proven pass rush ability off the edge from its defensive ends. And it's not a defense that is designed to create a ton of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They had a Big 12 low, 16 sacks last season. It wasn't like an outline goal this offseason to start rushing passers a little bit more effectively. But Gronowski had, he self-described having too fast of feet, not having his footwork the way he wanted to. I think the best way to get him to stay in that mode if you're Iowa State is to speed him up a little bit, and the best way to do that is to obviously rush the passer. But they don't necessarily have the proven pass rushers outside of Dominique Orange, and that's from an interior defensive line perspective. And those guys generally don't get the pressure that the edge rushers do.
So we broke it down a little bit, X's and O's, so to speak, but now we need to get to the nitty gritty of it all. Alex, I'm going to ask you first, who wins on Saturday?
Yeah, in the preseason, I actually picked Iowa to win this game, in part because I picked Iowa State to beat K-State in the Week 0 matchup in Ireland. I feel like they're two toss-up games. I was just kind of splitting them 50-50. But because of the way Week 1 went for Iowa, and the more I've analyzed the Iowa roster, my prediction is actually flipped a little bit. I have Iowa State winning 21-17 on Saturday. I think Rocco Becht and the Iowa State tight ends can attack some of the question marks and the inexperience that Iowa has at the linebacker spot. I also think that Iowa State's wide receivers, they've impressed me in the first 2 weeks of the season for the Cyclones. I think they can potentially exploit some of the inexperience in Iowa's secondary. So I have Iowa State winning a close one. But if Iowa State wins by more than 3 points, it'll be the first time since I think 2005 that Iowa has lost this game by more than 3 points. So I certainly expect a close one. That's what the series has turned into. I think since 2012 or 2013, 9 games have been decided by one score or less. So it's certainly going to be a close one, and that's what I expect.
I think if these two teams play 10 times, each of them win 5. This is a true 50-50 game for me. It depends the way the ball bounces, right? I think Iowa is going to win the battle in the trenches on both sides of the ball. But like Alex said, I think Rocco Becht is good enough to win a game on his own. I really love Iowa State's tight end room. I think their Iowa linebackers are going to have their hands full with them. My subscribers at Hawkeye Insider are not happy with me, guys. I did pick Iowa State. I think that this game goes over for only the 4th time in 21 years. I have Iowa State 24-23. I think Rocco Becht gets the ball with 1.5 minutes left, and Conradi hits another walk-off field goal against the Hawkeyes. But if Iowa goes out there and runs the ball like they did in Week 1, if they really dominate the line of scrimmage, if Xavier Williams, the redshirt freshman, replicates his performance last week, he had 122 yards on 13 carries. His quads were brought up by 3 different Iowa players last week about how strong he is and how tough he is to tackle. I do think Iowa does have a strong chance to win this game, but again, I got to go with my gut here. I just think that there's too much inexperience on a Phil Parker defense, but I've also learned over the years, guys, you don't doubt Phil Parker, but this might be the first time I'm going against the grain. So I have Iowa State narrowly winning for the first time in Ames since 2011.
Hawkeyes fans, if you're out there watching, listening, you don't subscribe to 24/7 Sports, and you don't like what you just heard, well, now it's even more reason to become a subscriber so you can join the message boards and let David know how you feel. Alec Bussey, David Eichholt, thank you.